flying fish. One morning, Kanan was at the station taking on passengers when Arthur arrived with some coaches full of passengers. He had some urgent news for him. I'm to be going to the works to have a new boiler fitted in next week, said Arthur, so you're going to have to take my fish. Why's that? Asked Kanan. Because, said Arthur, Henry would normally take the Flying Kipper, but he's broken down, so I'm gonna have to ask you to take my fish. That would make sense, said Kanan. Arthur chuckled. He had heard the Heritage double tender engine's bluntness from the secret tender club before. You know, he said, whilst Donald and Douglas are taking care of your passengers, I'm sure your job at the fishing village will be easier. I hope so, said Kanan, and he puffed away, uncoupled from his coaches. And Arthur puffed away. The next week later, after Arthur went to the works for a new boiler, Kanan's first job was to take a goods train to the harbour. Kanan was trying his best. The trucks all giggled since they heard about when Kanan crushed a truck before. Kanan paid no attention to the trucks and steamed on. He still bumped them still while they were still well behaved. But it wasn't too long until Kanan had finally taken the goods train to the harbour. When he had just arrived, some waiting fish vans called out. Look, said the first van in front. Here's that nasty engine again. I heard that he destroys trucks and crushes them, said another, and they giggled all the same. Kanan was cross. You watch your mouth, he said. I'm to take you all to the docks, and you better behave, unless, he said, and Kanan puffed away. After his first goods train had gone, Kanan was coupled to the fish trucks, and he steamed away. He'd still bumped the trucks, and the trucks were still cross. Now come on, said Kanan, no more nonsense, he said. But this made the fish vans very cross. They were still thinking about how to pay him out. Here's the plan, said the troublesome boxcar. He whispered it to all the vans. Kanan didn't hear a thing at all, and they were still saying, "We'll do it tonight," they whispered, and tonight it was going to be a really tough disaster. Later, Kanan had just came back to the sheds where the Fat Controller was waiting. He looked like he wanted to say something to Kanan. I would like you to take the midnight fish from the harbour to the docks, he said. But sir, said Kanan, I feel so tired. Can't you send for another engine? Really useful engines work hard, whatever the weather, he said, and the Fat Controller walked away. Kanan was disappointed, but he knew real useful engines were not meant to argue. Evening had finally arrived, and Kanan arrived to the harbour and bumping the fish vans as usual. All right, he said, I'm disappointed coming back here, so you all better hurry up. With that, he was coupled to the fish vans, and he puffed away in a hurry. The salty air took his mind off his stress, and Kanan was feeling much better. That's much better, he said. He didn't even mind pulling fish vans any longer. With that, Kanan hurried on. The vans from behind still had their plans. Remember, said the first one, Kanan will be paid out. They went through a tunnel. Then, They went past by the coastal track, and it was time for the kill. The band, their plan was to have their brakes on. They slammed on their brakes. Kanan pulled hard. "Stop it!" he shouted. "This is not helping." But then there was more trouble. The coupling snapped, and the vans got away. "Hee hee 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 hee," they chuckled. Then Kanan knew what was going on. "Come back here, you!" and he raced after the vans as fast as his wheels could carry him. The vans went through the tunnel and out, and they knew that there was going to be more and more trouble. Back at the harbour, everything is quiet as usual, but not for long. The trucks went through an old line and crashed into some barriers inside an old shed. The timber was broken and no one was hurt, but Kanan was very cross. "You silly vans," he scolded. "Now it will take us more repairs," he said. "And I was nearly squashed," said a voice. Kanan heard the voice. "Who said that?" he said. "Is that a human?" "No," said the voice. Kanan didn't know what to think what it was. But inside the old shed was an old brake van. He had wrinkles in his face. "I'm a brake van," he said. Then Kanan gasped and stopped next to the broken barriers from the shed. "And who are you?" he asked, after he heard where the voice came from. "I'm Jeff," said the brake van from inside, and I'm about to be set for scrap," he said. "But now," he said, "I'm almost a broken brake van," he said. Kanan felt afraid. I'll go get those vans out of the way," he said. "Then I can ask for help," he said, and he puffed off. The next morning, Frank was able to pull the fish vans out of the old shed. The Fat Controller spoke cautiously to Kanan. "I'm not happy with how you've handled the fish vans, but thank you for telling me how this happened." "You're welcome, sir," said Kanan. "Now shall we get whoever's in there?" "Sure thing," said the Fat Controller, and their plan was put into action. Moments after, and with his superior strength, Kanan pulled Jeff the brake van out of the old sheds. The brake van was completely covered in soot and cobwebs, and he looked indeed old. "Happy to be out of the sheds, are you now?" said Kanan happily. "Yes," said the old brake van. "Ah, so you must be Jeff," he said. "One of the old heritage brake vans that used to work there." "Yes," said Jeff. He even began to say, I was sent here a long time ago in this fishing village to send every single fishing delivery," he said. "After this line had closed, I was put in this shed before I was ready for scrap," he said. The shed inside was overgrown, and I had still been forgotten." "I see," said the Fat Controller. One of his engines, Arthur, discovered the fishing village a few years back when he was new to Sodor. Then if we have found this fishing village, why didn't you shout out loud?" "Because I was worried you might scrap me, sir," said Jeff. "Don't worry," said the Fat Controller. "I'm sending you to the works where they restore my engines," he said. Kanan knew what the Fat Controller meant. At the time when he was known as 17, he had been put in a forgotten siding at an old mine shaft and was left to rust. "Sir," he said, I may have deserved to be in a rusted siding after my behaviour back on my old line," he said, "but it looks like to me Jeff doesn't know what he has done wrong. He hasn't done anything, hasn't he?" "Of course not," said the Fat Controller. Then Kanan wondered. "I know what it's like to be casted aside. I'll take you to the works then." "Oh, thank you," said Jeff. With that, Kanan was coupled and puffed on to take Jeff to the works. A short while after, Kanan was at the big station taking on water when Arthur arrived, coming back from the works with a new boiler. The Fat Controller stepped out of Arthur and spoke to Kanan. "Kanan," he said, "I have something to make you useful again." "What's that, sir?" he asked, looking down at his buffers. "The trucks don't seem to be trusting you. To learn the ways of treating trucks the way they want to be treated, Jeff will teach you the ways of handling trucks gently and making them behave." "Thank you, sir," said Kanan. "Does that mean Jeff will be my brake van?" "That's right," said the Fat Controller, and he walked back into Arthur. Arthur winked at Kanan. That means he has this whole train of fishing vans for you now," he said, and now Jeff will still take care of them, just like you're going to," said Arthur. "Then I'll get them right away," said Kanan, after he had finished his long drink and puffed away. And indeed he did. Kanan was coupled to his fishing train, and off he steamed. One of the fishing vans were all talking to Jeff. "Hey," said the boxcar from behind. "Don't you know this engine is troublesome?" he said. "Well," said Jeff, he rescued me, but Kanan was still listening. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Yes, everything is okay," said Jeff. "Good to hear," smiled Kanan, and he was still continuing on. Kanan was a very friendly engine, although he had already told the other engines about his past when he was known as 17, but Kanan did like pulling coaches, but he was still one of those engines that need to learn the ways of treating trucks.